Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave, and waiting for Meki to join us. Who knows what's going on in Meki's life? But anyway, we're on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, where it's not just radio, so jump on into the chat room if you can. This is show number 286, and as Meki would say, quoting Meki with an extrapolation of what he would say, 680 and 200. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop digital radio. If you missed it, Solaris' show is awesome, though I didn't get the details of who was on and what they were talking about, but I'm sure, as you will be like me, and that is, I've got my access to the archive so I can go ahead and listen to it. Yeah, let's just consider it a podcast. It's like an MP3 cast. It only costs $5 a month too, you know. It's not much. Like in Australia, there'd be like a medium coffee or a large coffee. And that's all it takes to access the archives. You can get all the host shows for that $5 a month cost. In fact, going back I think it's like a year's worth back. So take advantage of it when you've got the access. We acknowledge, that's Meki and I, acknowledge the traditional owners of our land, where we live, where we are. Where I am, it's the Darkin Jung. That's Darkin. Darkin, Jung, and all the people around here either have DA at the beginning or DAR at the beginning, and each one of them have a different, they're called mobs, so have a different mob, or they don't call themselves tribes, but a different mob around, and it's really interesting. You should do the research of where you live to see who the people were, know what their beliefs were, because one day you might need it. I think it's important. What do they eat? How do they live? What kind of community sizes were they? Do you know, where Meki lives, it's the Daruk people. And Meki and I, if he was on air right now, he would agree with me and pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and future. That's very important. See, if you don't know, there was a Midnight Oil song that we should just give their land back to them. I think it's really, it's the dream, obviously. They were the custodians of the land for some 80,000 years. The custodians. Some would say traditional owners. Well, they didn't consider it ownership. They were custodians. And I think that's really important to take note of. I wish that we could do as good a job that they had done, and I think we fail on many accounts. Okay. This week in the news, they've got three things. One's just for me locally, in fact so local it's at my house, and that was I lost 6 chooks. I only had 7, and I didn't lose them like Bo Peep and her sheep. Foxes ate through the barbed wire. Not the barbed wire. That's painting the wrong picture of me, isn't it? No, the chicken fence, the chicken wire. They ate through that or dug underneath it, and were able to abscond with and destroy. We found 3 carcasses. 2 of them completely, like, not just headless, neckless as well. Without neck, without head and neck, just the body, where it looked like it had been chewed off and consumed. Terrible state of affairs, to be honest. We loved our chooks. They were very good girls. They looked after us, providing eggs. So I've now made a fortress. Fortress with a sliding door that opens up and down, that they can't get in. They're in a steel. Yeah, I suppose it's steel. It's not tin. It's like a steel shed now on a concrete plinth, and there's no digging into it. There's no getting into it. The door locks is locked permanently, and the only way in and out is via the slot door that I open and close. And we'll have to see what's going on. We were actually planning on buying a whole bunch more chickens. There's limits where I live, according to, if you're not a business and selling them, to how many you can have. You certainly can't have a rooster in a domestic environment. But, and the laws state you can't have the chicken coop within 5 meters of your property. We don't. Can't adjoin a dwelling where you cook food. We don't. So we got up to, I think, 18 chickens at one point there, and we had a surplus of eggs that we were giving away. And I think that's what it's all about. Oh, it looks like Meki is on board, so I'm going to pull him in if I can. Let's see. This new Skype, I don't know about you, but this new Skype just is endlessly awful. I've even had to back it down to the previous look, because the new look is terrible. Okay. I'm glad the audio is good there. Diet Joke in the chat room, thank you very much. Let's see what Meki's audio is like when he joins. Meki, are you there, Meki? Earth to Meki. Yeah, I can. Once your video and audio is all caught up, I think we might be right. That happens. So, Meki, I was just talking about my chickens. I just lost 6 this week, and so we're due now to go out, I think next weekend or the weekend after, and buy some more chooks at the chook auction. So anyway, now Meki, so what I've done is I pasted you yesterday. I posted into your Skype feed an MH370 news article. Now this is so interesting. It's interesting for me because we were, it happened literally 2 or 3 hours before we went to air, all those years ago, back in 2014. So it felt like we were breaking the story. We didn't break the story, but we were right on we were surfing that wave at the front, and it was such a mysterious loss, and still is today. But I wanted to bring up something. I've written a little news story myself around the thing that I've posted to you, and I'll get to that detail in a second. And that is, in 2014 it disappeared. MH370, this is a 777, disappeared completely with 239 people on board. Why did we quit looking? Why did we quit looking for a plane, the only plane in the history of all air crashes that we've never found? It's taken years. We still haven't found it. Completely gone. Why when it disappeared, this is the question I'm asking, why when it disappeared, did they say it travelled so much further than the fuel load would have allowed for it? That's just preposterous. Okay, so the search was stopped this year, and a new company has vowed to find it, saying that they think they have it placed just outside the original search zone, which is in the southern Indian Ocean. Right? Good for you. They say do not pay us any money unless we find it. When we find it, you can pay us all the money you like. But oddly enough, and this is where the story picks up. Oddly enough, the man in Malaysia who was the delegate to receive new wreckage found in Madagascar has been killed. August 24th, this is this week. The Honourable Zahid Raza was assassinated in Antananarivo and Antananarivo is the place he was assassinated in. Even the person who was to deliver the items to Mr. Raza, he was Mr. Gibson, said he's received death threats because of his self-financed research into what happened to the flight. What? This is the most mysterious missing flight of all time. And even the guy researching it has received death threats. And the guy who is meant to have received the debris has been assassinated right before he was to hand it over. So, what makes a possible link to MH370 even more suspicious is, this is a quote from the news article, is that in the time period surrounding his death, Mr. Raza was expected to visit the Malagasy Ministry of Transport, retrieve additional recovered pieces, and deliver those pieces to Malaysia. End quote from the article. The news article suggests that many pieces of the plane have since been recovered, but the black box and fuselage remain missing, leading to countless conspiracy theories. However, this is mine. I would like to point out that the French authorities denied that no wreckage found so far were from MH370. And I think I've got some grammatical errors in that statement. I'll repeat it in my English, and that is, so far, not one piece of wreckage has been confirmed 100% to be that from missing aircraft MH370. The Malaysian president openly admitted that the pieces were. This is about a news conference in Paris. Deputy Prosecutor Serge Makawake declined to confirm, this is my proof, that the debris belonged to MH370, though he said there was strong indications that it did. There's indications, not that it was, and he declined to confirm it was actually from the flight. The conflicting comments raised questions about why Malaysia had seemingly gone rogue with its announcement, to infuriate many families of those on board the plane who have waited more than 500 days, that was when the news story was done, for concrete clues into the fate of their loved ones. Okay, so there has been 0 confirmed pieces of the plane. Now, Mackie and I, when we were doing our research into this, we discovered that every single piece of the plane, every piece of solid material, the frame, all the subframes, all the, the pieces that if you cut the wing apart or take the skin off, every one of those last pieces there left is all stamped with the plane number, which is 9MMRO from memory. So that's the flight number, the actual plane number, not 370, that's the flight number. But the plane number is a different number entirely. Now, the problem is, and I'm going to paste this current news story in, is that now we're seeing deaths in relation to it, death threats. What is it still that has such a high price to it? What don't they want people to know about? What can there be? What? This is the thing. What if it didn't crash? What if it went through a time portal or something, right? I'm being silly here, but I'm trying to make a point. So, if it didn't crash and it went through a time portal or something, and the governments of the world are intending on making the time portal thing go away like it never existed, like the lintel at the Abydos temple certainly depicts a plane and what looks like a boat and a helicopter. If a time portal did exist and was able to somehow throw this plane into a different existence, maybe it was engineered. Maybe that thing was designed. Maybe they were trying to do something and it went wrong and it's just vanished and it to some future or past. But they're trying to say, look, we've found some debris. Look, let's just put it to rest. It's crashed. Let it go. But if an independent researcher has found no evidence to say that these pieces are really from the real plane, and the French investigators who are leading up this investigation have not declared 100% that any of these pieces came from the plane, which is, I mean, you have to be an idiot. It's either from the plane or it isn't from the plane. Why? That's my question. It's why. I respectfully understand that 239 people may have lost their lives or may have gone to a different dimension, right? That's still a tragedy. And I'm not disputing the tragedy and how awful it is, because you know what? If it happened to any of my family members or anyone I knew, I'd be devastated. But it raises into question. Look, if they haven't found it yet, and they're called the search off going, we're never going to find it, forget it. And now suddenly a company's gone, actually, we're going to start looking for it. And now people are going missing, being assassinated, there's death threats. What is it they don't want us to know? Meki, do you have any input on this? How crazy is this situation, right? G'day, mate. Mm-hmm. 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 That's right. Hmm. It sure is. Look, to add to the mystery, and we mentioned this before, and I think there's a whole show on it, so I won't go too deep. Just remember, it flew over two military installations, of which neither of them were declared to have known anything about the plane. Certainly, if it to have it transponder turned off, as it was reported, and you had a flyover over your airspace, certainly a military airspace, you would have launched an interceptor to see what's going on. That didn't happen. The witnesses who said that they saw lights around a plane around about the same time in the sea between there and Cambodia, would have alerted me as an investigator. Otherwise, the low flying plane over Sumatra, so low that you could see the rivets, they said. And then the fuel load, it wasn't sufficient to take it to where it said it, it's to have disappeared into the water. You just have to consider all of these, just those points alone, and maybe something else was going on. The sister plane, of course, it's in a hangar and hasn't flown since, and that's also something of consideration. So who knows? Honestly, I think it's one of those mysteries that, like Mecca said, time will tell, history will show. They do find it in the water down there. Was it put there? Was it towed out to sea after landing safely at Diego Garcia, only to be sunk, so that later on it could all sort of have worked out? The cargo on board were lithium-ion batteries. There was a pallet of them. That's too much to be taken on a plane in one shipment due to fire hazard, and it's quite explosive. Whether they were there to power the experiment, to prove the experiment's worthiness, maybe for the military, but where was it going? It was going into the hands of China, and that's one of the things. If you have a plane cloaking technology that it was claimed to have been on the patent, then certainly where would you want that to have been kept within the boundaries of? Maybe the US company, and I forget the company name, Meki. It's on the tip of my tongue. But look, do your research, have a look to see what you think happened, and I'm still waiting. Once that we find the plane, it doesn't mean that we know all the answers. Certainly, it doesn't explain why someone would be assassinated who should be the recipient of these pieces. Maybe he was going to tell the truth. Maybe he wouldn't play the game. It's certainly not beyond imagination that playing with the Lego in the sky is an option. It's certainly on the table as far as the big players are concerned. They don't care about who's what, where, just that the information is kept where it should be. We know that. Away from us, indeed. So that's why, the more questions there are, the more conspiracies will emerge, and, they may not all be right. And, so keep your ears to the ground. Let us know if you find anything. Contact Meki and I through the website if you know anything. All right. Next, Meki. This is the big thing. Remember how The topic's North Korea. So there's a lot of memes getting around on Facebook and social media in general, and then the news are telling us one thing, and that's our news is telling us one thing. The US news is telling you another thing. The China news is telling you another thing entirely. And independent news has like a balanced view of the entire thing. However, I want to try to bring this to light. Would you be such an idiot, given all the sanctions and all the warnings, and that I love that fire and fury from this, that like the likes of which the world has never seen? Do you think those threats were taken seriously when today a 6.3 quake on the North Korean, let's call it peninsula, really, what, it's an extension of landmass from China, was it an underground nuke? We've seen what an underground nuke can do to their needles in a seismic sensing facilities. They make them shudder and do all sorts of things. What do you think? Maybe it's a false flag. Maybe it didn't happen at all and they've faked it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Iran. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the media today, they're spruiking that they're now hydrogen bomb capable, and that it is now sized such that it can go onto an ICBM. This is the level of rhetoric, though. Remember, we don't have a claim directly from Kim Jong Un. None of this is a claim. This is the Western media talking it up. Now, if you put these two things together, the 6.3 quake, maybe it's an underground test, and they're also hydrogen bomb capable. That's really just putting a pellet inside the, giving it fuel for the explosion, and so that it consumes that. You know what, Meki, take it as where it's got to go. Yeah, that's right. Bad News Sunday. That's right. Look, and by the way, it's Father's Day here in Australia, and I had my happy Father's Day to everyone listening. And if it's not your time of year where you live, apply this to that day. All right, happy Father's Day, Mackie. How many nuclear tests in the atmosphere would you say that there has been since the invention of the atomic bomb? Well, if you'd read what I gave you the answer for. Oh, and he's got a revised answer, Mackie. No, yeah, he should have. Oh well. Anyway, I'll answer it for you. More than 2,000 of them. Yeah, yeah, hundreds times 10, 20. So it's more than 2,000 of them, and you know what? No wonder the planet's wheezing and having all the difficulty it's having right now, let alone all the nuclear spills and everything. I think one day when humans are no longer using fossil fuels and we've vacuumed all of the bad particulates out of the atmosphere, and the planet's starting to get back to the way it was before. We were terrible custodians of the planet, I'll tell you. We've basically raped it for resources and burnt stuff and polluted it like there's without abandon. And the plastics in the ocean, oh my goodness me, don't get me started there. Um, you know, it doesn't seem to stop. So look, it's not doom and gloom, just bad news Sunday, right? And I think, Mackie, just going back to North Korea, like I wouldn't put it past the media to be drumming this, war drum, banging on it as much as they can. But what's really being missed here is the Putin side of this, and what do we find out this week, Mickey, about the consulates? The consulate staff and Russian and the US consulate staff has now been evacuated out of Russia and out of America. They've been closed. Yeah, okay. They've been asked to reduce it or something, haven't they? I'm okay. So the news story from Reuters is Kremlin orders Washington to slash embassy staff in Russia, and they've been asked to cut 60% of its people. All right, but that was apparently in retaliation for what Washington asked Russia to do, and that was do the same thing, which you probably didn't hear about. There you go. Do you know once the consulates and the diplomatic staff wind up, in most cases, all the cases I've seen, except for I think in Australia, when we asked one of them to leave, it led to war. It led to something going down, and this was the precursor actions from the countries. So, it really does. This all paints a big picture, and I think that the media is putting their focus on North Korea so it can avoid advertising that. Because Mackie, you know the 24-hour news cycle. You know how fickle it is. They can only show 5 stories a day, and those top 5 stories are not just their own doing. They're our Australian government will throw a story in there which pushes one out. Something else will happen where the editor gets a phone call and says, you can't run that story. All right, I'll run this cute kitty thing instead. All right, that's great. We can do that. Cat stuck in a tree. So or there's a downtown fire, or a plane crash. And at the moment, 370 is back in the media, which pushes all the other good news out of it. You hear what I'm saying? And I was making a point about that. That's what we're. You know what? I like to listen to the news throughout the day, not the evening news or the morning news, but the one in the middle of the day, where they're able to run all the stories that you hear that are active right now. They'll take the whole day to run through the stories, and at night time they just give you the top five. Top five? What am I interested in top five? I want to hear all the stories going on. In Australia, we have a yeah, that's right. It's like a 50,000 foot view of what's really going on. I can't really see it. That's the plan. Yes, we have a plebiscite coming up in this country for marriage equality, and the news this week has been all over that. They're going to postal vote it, but our answer isn't compulsory, and the government's going to look at the percentage of yes and no votes, but it won't be yes and no, and it won't be a single statement and a question. It'll just be some convoluted way of confusing the reader to not understand how they should vote, yes or no, to the question. The question won't be, do you want marriage equality? It won't be that question. It'll be something else. In this blah 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 state of such and such with the thingo and the whatchamacallit and Russia, and it won't be a simple question. So can my dog can my dog marry my chicken? No, no. Can my dog marry my chicken? Yes. Awesome. Completely. Wait for the day when you can just have your head sewn on to the top of someone else's body. All right. Yeah. Well, they're talking about a head transplant towards the end of the year, and they say that they've had some varying success, and they're looking forward to being able to trial it. Now, I know that. Yeah. Okay. Uh huh. Uh huh. That's right, because for all intents and purposes, Meki, all of your physical identification, your face mapping, your fingerprints, your DNA will show up as you, but it would actually say be me, for instance, in there controlling it all. Uh huh. Yeah, I hear you. Hmm. Hey, don't give George Soros any ideas. Don't give George Soros any ideas, because he's going. Oh, I like this show, Dave and Mickey's Shiny Side Out thing. Wow, I'm going to do that thing. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find some child where I can put my brain, stuff it into their head, and I'm still going to be me. I'll live forever. You have to. I think you're right, but the Olympic Games has always struggled with since the invention of being able to change genders. They've always had an issue with and tested for whether you were truly a woman or not, or truly a man or not, truly the sex that you said you were, because and there's no better place to have challenged whether someone is faster or you know, better at a particular sport than the male female difference. And that's all proven back in times, event timings, and the fastest Olympic records. It does show a difference. However, there are people who have had a little bit more Y chromosome as a female, a little bit more, and had a faster time. And now, when they did some testing, have said, I don't think your tests were 100% the first time you did them, were they? And they go, no. I had hormone therapy or something, and whatever it is. So look, it's a concern. It's a concern legally. I think the words man or woman should be struck off for person, and that the marriage equality should be for humans or bipedal, Homo sapiens sapiens or something like that as the word person. I think that's where it should go. I don't think you should be able to marry your dog or bird or cat or, I don't think any of those things should be allowed. However, hopefully the question will determine what the answer will be. But I don't think that they're going to word the question in such a way that everyone in Australia can understand it. And I think it's going to be worded to be a little confusing, sort of like when the GST question came up, where it was almost nonsensical. You had to read it a number of times to understand what you were supposed to answer. Where was the actual question in their paragraph of text, their complicated paragraph of text? But what I like, Meki, is this is one of those true democracies gone mad styles of let's ask the people. So it doesn't matter what the people say, there's still going to be, the filtering of, well, they said yes, but they didn't really mean it, so we're not going to even bother. Or, yeah, it looks like most people said yes, so now we're going to have a vote in Parliament about it. What if their vote differs to be a majority of no? So the people said yes, the Parliament says no, and so we don't get it anyway. And that's the stupidest thing that I've ever heard. But that's where we're driving it down. We're at full speed towards this right now. It's about to happen. And I just think that's crazy. I think the whole concept of asking the people for their outcome, like Brexit, I mean, they're afraid. This is where they're actually afraid of what the answer might be. Because in Australia, let's call it the right wing, left wing, or, the right wing. The extremists in the right wing are really connected to the church, and the church really doesn't want those people to have any change in the marriage, the policies in Australia. Pardon me, I'm still recovering from the flu, but much better. And that's the hard part, because they're puppets for the church. Puppets. In America, Meki, they've got this thing, separation of church and politics, or church and power, because they were really afraid in the early days that the church would control the way the company, church and state. But we don't have that, and we have those, we have like Reverend Fred Nile. I don't even know he's still in power, still having a say from the church's point of view. What? Don't you have to question that? I think, if it went wrong, Meki, if the people said yes and the government said no, I think that would be the last time that those people in government would be in power. I think they'd certainly get pushed out. But then because this is it's not online. It's not an online thing where you can click yes or no. It's actually written down and you've got to post it back or whatever, or you have an option to do it online. How many of those are going to get changed? How many of those are going to be filled in by dead people? How many of those people who were supposed to have filled it in because they didn't make the deadline, does someone get an opportunity to do it on their behalf? Secretly, in the back room somewhere. So these are all the questions that you have to ask yourself. If they said, 60% of people in Australia returned a vote, I'd probably be happy with that. That sounds about right. Even though it's compulsory. But we'll have to. I think this is that democracy discussion that everyone needs to have about the country they live in. If you think you're in a democracy, question it. Don't trust it. Question it. And if you're not in one, you need to vote yourself into one. So, Meki, we've only got like 1 minute before the top of the hour. That's just flown by. Yeah, completely. It's a thing. Agreed. And we've been given some compliments by people that have looked at the show notes that we do actually research what we talk about. We research it, and we yeah, and but we're making them available to others so that you can do start there. Maybe you know we've collected the information, and it's there for you to begin your journey. And maybe you'll come up with the same idea as we have, or maybe you'll have a differing opinion. But they're all valid. But we want to know why you'd have a differing opinion, and where is your evidence-based approach to how you think about it. They're really interesting topics. That's right. 300 feet. Mm-hmm. Well, if we go back 100 years, we had Gaslight, the Iceman, the Toilet Man that would come around and empty your septic tank. We had just invented cars, for instance, and we didn't have. We were still burning, only fossil fuels. We didn't have any electronics. You can think about how much we've changed, but then there wasn't at all that steep incline of technology. If that was only domesticating animals because of maybe trade taught them how to do it or something like that, or this was the the influence of external parties, I'm not sure. But I have to tell you that having such a sudden switch has lifelong issues. Right now, we're seeing the greatest amount of people with health issues relating to food types. Could you imagine suddenly having to consume lentils and peas and cereals when all you're eating was a pure protein diet? Maybe eating gazelles. You can imagine the kind of people that would be, oh, actually, I don't like lentils or cereal. Yuck! Give me the gazelles back. All right. So I just think of it like that. I have a really weird sense of how quickly a place can change its entire running. That's what I have a sense of, maybe doubt, or without medicine they could have lost a lot of population. So also 7,000 years ago, the domestication of the pig in Greece. Bacon. Oh, hang on. Yeah. Hmm. Wow. And I know our scalpels are chemically sharpened as well. Yeah. Fine grained volcanic glass for tool making from village to village over long distances is not the tool making it took a long distance to make. That's what they're talking about, the trade. 6,500 years ago, also Jericho in the Jordan Valley, an impressively sized community, covers 9 acres. Its small beehive, that's a Freudian slip, beehive shaped houses clustered behind massive stone walls. A small town, perhaps in constant fear of marauders after large grain stocks and stored trade goods, maybe bartered from the coast and interior deserts, all the oldest known continuously inhabited city on Earth. But I'm not hearing anything here about Angkor Wat. It was larger. It didn't have the marauders, so it could thrive with open borders. That's really interesting. Mackie, take the next one. Yes. Mm, mm-hmm. Well, I just wanted to mention that the word sameness is a perfectly cromulent word for anyone out there. Okay, so pastoralism, which is cattle, sheep, and goats in the Sahara, the potter's wheel in Mesopotamia, was 5,500 years ago. So only 100 years past the flood, and we've already now, we're herding and farming. That's amazing. 5,200 years ago, food production in Egypt, likely from Southwest Asia's Fertile Crescent. And the last one that I'll read is 5,000 years ago, food production arises in Sahel, region of Africa. Sorghum, African rice, and guinea fowl. Nile settlers harness the cycle of floods. Remember the floodplain, the fertile waters flooding the floodplain, and they was capturing that flood sediment and utilizing that on their crops. If you don't know about it, read about it. The Egyptian calendar, regulated by sun and moon, 360 days, 12 months, and each of them 30 days. And of course, so we got a whole bunch of problems with that, but that's something else. Meki, what's next? Yeah, 3,300 years ago, first invention of writing. The Sumerians it was. What a surprise. Sumerians of Mesopotamia developed cuneiform writing. Quickly adopted by Egyptians, Sumerian city-states emerge. Sumerians develop the wheel, people, and the 60-second minute. 3,200 years ago, is that Menes? It looks to me like Menes. Nama, king of Upper Egypt, conquers Lower Egypt, forming single or old kingdom. Development of hieroglyphics in Egypt. Embalming of the dead developed in Egypt as well, about 3,200 years ago. Another 100 years on, 3,100 years ago, Egyptian Empire arises. The first dynasty of Egypt. Grapes first crushed and fermented to produce wine. Crowd goes wild. Now that is a step forward. Thank you. I'll be on a pilgrimage, Meki, to Egypt to just to have my little shrine set up that I can drink a wine to. Then I can come home again. I'm good. 3,000 years ago, Meki, maybe? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you did you know, Meki, that I've been doing some research this week onto that 1,000-ton stone moving, And you know, do you know what the name city crane means? A city crane is a wheeled crane, the largest of the wheeled cranes that you can drive on suburban streets without any extra traffic flow issues. And you know, rods come out from it. It's got a rather large boom. You need 20 of those. 20 to be able to lift up 1,000-ton stone. But they can't all get to it. You can only lift it up and put it down again. You can't actually lift it up and drive it anywhere because they're all pointing towards it. Isn't that the stupidest thing you've ever heard? And because those booms that come out with the feet that have to, you know, apply to increase the load around the vehicle with the crane arm on it, means that they can't move it. They can only pivot. Yeah. So, so what I wanted to bring up also, Mackie, when we were talking about the Sumerians back here, 3,500 years ago, I wanted to bring up that remember that they had electricity for the first time that we remember, that we've found proof of. The Egypt for gold plating and such, right? But also, this is around obviously the same time of, you know, the Egyptian Empire arises, and remember the pyramids depict, well, there's hieroglyphs depicting that electrical light was used in the pyramids rather than, you know, using like tar on sticks wrapped around cloth, which would leave a soot where there's no soot. I just want to remind people of that. Now, Meki, you're absolutely right. We could have had 20 civilizations. And look, let's be really generous and say if we only had 10 of them, that we could have gone to space every time. That we could have, and you know, like Angkor Wat, for instance, Angkor Wat had a supported about 1 million. So did some of the cities in South America. Could have about 1 million people around their cities, especially where the Sun Temple is. Now, I don't see that on these timelines. That's the really weird thing, because we don't know what date. We can't date it. We can't date when they used it. But if it was pre-flood, there's very little evidence that comes from before pre-flood except for monolithic structures. Or anything that was buried over in silt. So it's very difficult to make a distinction. It's easy on this side of the flood, because it happened. But there's no dispute about it happening. And it's not just a biblical thing. It didn't just happen in the Bible, and you can't just dismiss it because it's written in the Bible. It happened, it was global, and because it happened and it was global, there was a global downing of tools. There was also a global downing of memory. It was offline. We didn't bring anything from that side to this side significantly enough to be able to go ahead and move the stone. 1,000-ton stone. I brought it back to you, Mickey. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't, I don't want to make any more of these structures anymore for some reason. But they had that discussion globally, Mackie, globally. But they did that. Maybe a union got involved. Oh, we're not doing that anymore. No, that's it. No more of the stonework. Yeah, that's right. Down tools. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In human genetics, the Y chromosomal most recent common ancestor, the YMRCA, informally known as Y chromosomal Adam, is the most recent common ancestor. So MRCA, most recent common ancestor, from whom all living or currently living humans are descended. Well, patrilineally. The term YMRCA reflects that the fact that the Y chromosomes of all currently living males are directly derived from the Y chromosome of this remote ancestor. The my goodness me. Analogous, thank you very much. The analogous concept of the matrilineal most recent common ancestor is known as mitochondrial Eve. We just heard about that from Meki, the MRCA, named for the matrilineal transmission of mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA, the most recent woman from whom all living humans are descended, matrilineally. As with mitochondrial Eve, the title of Y chromosomal Adam is not permanently fixed to a single individual, but can advance over the course of human history as paternal lineages become extinct. Estimates of the time when Y most recent, most common ancestor lived have also shifted as modern knowledge of human ancestry changes. In 2013, the discovery of a previously unknown Y chromosomal haplogroup was announced, which resulted in a slight adjustment of the estimated age of the human YMRCA. By definition, it's not necessary that the YMRCA and the MRCA should have lived at the same time, while estimates as of 2014 suggest the possibility that two individuals may well have been roughly contemporaneous, albeit with uncertainties ranging in the tens of thousands of years. Wow, Meki, they used to live a long time back then, huh? The discovery of archaic Y haplogroup has pushed back the estimated age of the YMRCA beyond the most likely age of the mtMRCA. As of 2015, estimates of the age of the Y chromosomal range around 200 to 300,000 years ago, roughly consistent with the emergence of anatomically modern humans. Y chromosomal data taken from Neanderthal, from El Sidron in Spain, produced the YTMRCA of 588,000 years ago. For Neanderthal, Homo sapien patrilineages dubbed ante-Adam, and 275,000 years ago for YMRCA. My goodness me, such a discrepancy. Mm-hmm. Meki, I want to interject right there because I think it's really important. Right at this point, can you only imagine what would happen to the people who were identified as different? Catastrophic. Who knows? Who knows how? You know, right now we have um, an environment of pointing out the difference, of isolating those who are different, and because they're not like you, and this is what's been drummed into everybody. And I'm not saying like this is a post World War II thing and talking about Hitler in a way of, you know, of genocide. But what was it called, Meki, in South Africa? Apartheid. You think about how people are now being polarized into religious groups. It's just religion. Think about that. Think about how that would turn and how quickly would turn against those who were labeled maybe Neanderthal, maybe, you know, a majority of Florensis. You are different. You're not Homo sapiens sapiens anymore. I could only imagine that if the authorities did know, they wouldn't want this out. They would just want to consider everyone the same. Look, just shut up. Shut up, Mackie. Shut up. We're all the same. Forget it. Don't worry about it. Go back to your triangle. Oh, the blue skin of the Indian deities, Becky. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. So, so careful are my words on this. That if we can't be nice to each other and we consider ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens, where science tells us there should be no definition of race, we're so all closely related, so closely related, that it eliminates that entirely. Then to suggest that people could be from a different lineage, that is just so rotten. Imagine how awful we'd be. So Mecca, there's a story here. Scientists revised timeline of human origins. Now this comes from a story. This story was generated back in July 3rd, 2014. And it says between 2.1 and 1.8 million years ago, the oldest known species of human genus Homo, which is the tree emanating back as far as we can see, exhibited diverse traits. These species include the 1470 group and the 1813 group based on the Kenyan fossils, the KNM-ER 1470 on the left. And I'm not sure if I can get an image up straight away, but I promise to put one of these into the YouTube clip. And the 1813 version, I can see a distinct difference between them here. What I'll do, I'll see if I can pop the story in the chat room anyway. So many traits unique to humans were long thought to have originated in the genus Homo between 2.4 and 1.8 million years ago. Although scientists have recognized these characteristics for decades, they are reconsidering the true evolutionary factors that drove them. This story is about the change of aspect of the view that we should have changed dynamically as we discover them, but they were held so long and then sort of backdated. Oh, actually, we should have been looking at this for a long time ago. A large brain, long legs, the ability to craft tools, and prolonged maturation periods were all thought to have evolved together at the start of the Homo lineage as African grasslands expanded and Earth's climate became cooler and drier. However, new climate and fossil evidence analysed by a team of researchers, including the Smithsonian paleoanthropologist Richard Potts, Susan Anton, professor of anthropology at New York University, and Leslie Alio, present the Wenner-Gren Foundation for Anthropological Research, suggests that these traits did not arise in a single package. Rather, several key ingredients once thought to define Homo evolved in earlier Australopithecus ancestors. Yeah, Mackie, we're back on the map again. Between 3 and 4 million years ago, while others emerged significantly later. Now, this article does support the out of Australia thought of the species, and we've got some friends who who will be glad to come on the show and talk about their out of Australia thoughts. The team's research takes an innovative approach to integrating paleoclimate data, new fossils, and understandings of the genus Homo, archaeological remains, and biological studies of a wide range of mammals, including humans. The synthesis of these data led to the team to conclude the ability of early humans to adjust to changing conditions ultimately enabled the earlier species of Homo to vary, survive, and begin to spread from Asia, Eurasia 1.8 million years. Information